Hello all! Today I'm talking about the newest entry in the Conjuring universe, Conjuring Last Rites, which is the ninth film in the Conjuring universe and the fourth film in the main Conjuring series. And I'm super excited to talk about this one. This one came out last week in Australia, and I assume a lot of horror fans have already seen this one. We'll discuss a couple things to do with spoilers, but yeah, I'll share some of my thoughts, some things I liked, some things I didn't like, and yeah, let's get into it. So this film actually follows a similar premise to the first two films, with how, a family is getting possessed and their house is getting haunted, and then Ed and Lorraine come and help them. It's very similar to that. We don't see Ed and Lorraine show up to the Smells house until probably about halfway through the film. And in the build up to that, we do have the Smell family and their relationship and how their house is being taken over by these demons. And Ed and Lorraine basically come out of retirement to help them. So Judy's the one who kind of pushes them and says, we're not done here. There's this family that needs our help. And Ed and Lorraine are a bit skeptical. They've obviously been through a lot of shit and they just want to live a private life. And about halfway through, we see Ed and Lorraine trying to help them get through all this madness. So I won't lie, the first film in this franchise actually terrified the shit out of me. I saw it when it first came out in 2013. I saw it twice at the cinemas. And similar to how I felt with the first Insidious, I won't lie, I struggled to sleep for a few weeks. Back then was quite different because I did rewatch the first Conjuring film the other night and it didn't have the same effect as it did 12 years ago when I first saw it. But I won't lie, I don't get easily scared in horror films, especially now. And back then, when I first saw The Conjuring, I thought it was terrifying. That scene where Bathsheba's on top of the closet and jumps down at one of the main kids in the film. I thought that was absolutely terrifying in the cinemas. And James Wan, he's without a doubt one of my favourite horror directors. 4 of his films that he's directed are amongst my all-time favourites. And although he is not directing this new release, I was still excited for it nonetheless, considering it is technically the final chapter at this stage. I guess we'll see with, box office and whether or not that'll actually be the case in a few years. But it's still one of my most anticipated of the year. But at the same time, going into this, I wasn't overly optimistic just because I thought the third film personally was a letdown, and this new film is directed by Michael Chavs, who also did the third film. In saying that though, James Wan, he's a producer on Conjuring Last Rites, so naturally, yes, again, I was excited to see this because of his involvement with the film. So I went into this with an open mind, hoping that, it will be as good as the first two. I didn't even have any desire to rewatch the third film leading up to Last Rites. I did rewatch the first two, but I just remember sitting in the cinemas watching the third one and I was just bored and I was like, I just don't see the need to rewatch this. I just wasn't a fan of the third film. And Last Rites having that haunted house element that the first two had and bringing back a real life case, like a real life haunting in this one, similar to the first two, that did make me more excited. And I did actually like The Nun 2. I thought it was a massive step up from the first film and I think it had some good scares in it. So Michael directing that one, I thought, this could be a solid addition to the Conjuring universe and could be a good final wrap up of the main Conjuring film series. If you're not already aware, this one is based off the 1986 Smell hauntings in Pennsylvania. And I didn't even familiarize myself with the real life case going into this film. And I, expected, I was wanting a haunted house vibe similar to the first two. And then, of course, you've got the chemistry between the two leads, Patrick and Vera as Ed and Lorraine. So the chemistry of those two, I don't really even think I need to hope that there's going to be chemistry between them and romantic scenes of them in the film, because that's pretty much in every Conjuring film. And it was just so well done in those films. It really is a romance film at heart, I think. And Patrick Wilson is one of the hottest actors ever to grace our screens, so I was glad to see him back in this as well. Anyway, enough about the previous films. I got a bit carried away, sorry. So I think overall I didn't love the film and I didn't hate it. I think that at best it was mediocre. It was definitely better than the third entry. I think at this point, the Conjuring, like the main Conjuring films, are done, I think. I think they wrapped it up in a way that shows that the Warrens' story is done and complete. But in terms of the scares, maybe I'm just desensitized to horror and jump scares at this point, but I felt that the jump scares were a bit cheap. I thought that the CGI wasn't great. One thing this film does nicely is wrapping up the Warrens' story and making it feel complete. And there were some tender family moments in this film. In terms of the scares, that wasn't a standout for me, and I think that the entities weren't as captivating as they were in the first two films. It was definitely the bloodiest in the franchise, if that's your thing, but even those moments didn't really do it for me, and the CGI of the blood in this just seemed quite cheap, and it was just missing James Wan's touch. I do miss when James Wan directed horror, not to be shady to Michael, who directed the film, but there's something about James Wan's horror films that are just so creepy and unsettling, and I think if you're a fan of the Conjuring films, you should definitely go see this for Ed and Lorraine. Like, that's enough to see this film alone. As any Conjuring fan knows, there's always generally tends to be an opening scene with some haunting, at least with the first two films. As I said, haven't seen the third one in a while, so I don't remember too much about it. But obviously with the first film, we had the Annabelle opening scene, and then the second film, we had the Amityville opening sequence. That creepy entity at the start of Last Rites that showed up, I just didn't freak me out. I did like how they showed a little bit of Ed and Lorraine's backstory and what happened with Judy when she was born. So one thing I wanted to briefly mention, just in relation to spoilers, was the entities in this film. I think the new entities, there was this kind of older woman in this film who was one of the demons, and I would say she was the most effective out of them all. I did like, there was a scene in this with a massive Annabelle doll, and I thought that was pretty cool the way they did that. But yeah, the old woman in this, she pops up a few times, and I thought overall her jump scares were probably the best, and her scenes, like the scares with her, were the most effective. But still, she just kind of reminded me of, in a lot of horror movies, there's like the freaky old people, like in X and The Visit, and in It Chapter 2 as well. It just reminded me of that a little bit. And then there was also I think it was a lumberjack who popped up a couple of times. I didn't really find him to be all that scary. And that's one of the things that make these Conjuring films work so well, is how freaky the entities are. Again, I'm going back to the other films I know, but I love the Crooked Man and the Nun. I thought they were such original entities in these films, and even with Bathsheba, she was freaky as fuck. I remember she's the reason I struggled to sleep for weeks when I first saw the first film, which might be weird to some people, but I generally thought the Conjuring was like the Exorcist of the 2010s, and I absolutely love that film, and I'll still watch it from time to time. Same with the second film. But yeah, this one was a one-time watch for me. Who knows, you might like it more than I did, but I still think it's worth checking out. As I've said, this is better than the third film, but unsurprisingly, it just didn't hit as much as the first two films, so I think it's worth checking out. Also, oh my gosh, I completely forgot. I wanted to mention, this is a spoiler, by the way, at the end of the film, when Judy and her fiance get married, there's the wedding scene, and I did not expect Carolyn Perrin, who was the mother in the first film who got possessed, and then we have Peggy Hodgson from the second film. So Carolyn pops up, and then Peggy shows up, and then James Wan shows up as well in the wedding, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're all cameos, and I thought that was really cool at the end. The biggest surprise of the whole movie to me. So it was nice to see them show up. But I don't want to put anyone off and make people think that I thought this was a shit film, because it definitely wasn't. It was better than the third film, but as mentioned, in short, this just felt a bit mediocre, and the scares could have been better, in my opinion, and as well as the entities. I thought it could have been a bit more creative, but I love Patrick and Vera, and the family moments in this were nice. go watch it if you like the Conjuring films. Let's hope we get a Crooked Man spin-off in the future, because I'm still impatiently waiting for that. And let's hope it's directed by James Wan. Go check it out. I would love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for watching. I won't be posting any reviews for over a month, just because I'm going away overseas for a bit. But I do appreciate you watching, and yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and thanks again for watching. Bye.